Welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast. Today, Ben and I sat down with Prescript educator and personal trainer out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, Brendan Schultze. Brendan is also an online coach at Atomic Performance, which is his coaching business, and coaches out of the facility in Canada called Evolve Strength. We spoke to Brendan about many topics, including whiskey, cigars, and being a coach that actually gives a fuck about your clients' results. This was a super enjoyable chat. It felt like we were sitting around in Brandon's brand new, purpose built smoking room that also doubles as an office, something I'm extremely jealous of and have already made my case to M that my office also now needs custom ventilation to become primarily my smoking room and secondarily a podcast room and thirdly my office. So if anything's going to have a triple purpose, I feel like it should be this office that I'm speaking to you from right now. All right, into it. Hope you guys enjoy. And welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast with Ben and Nick. Fairly similar where if there's a car crash and someone dies, the family or friends will go and put reefs and stuff on the side of the road, and it's like an RIP. We love you and we miss you. That's one thing. Like I get that. That's kind of like a sweet sentiment. But for the government to just rock in and just put a random sign that says fatality and nothing else, it's kind of insensitive and also kind of awesome at the same time.
I know. For me and like my dark humor, it's just kind of, I was numb to it before because I just thought it was normal. But again, like now that I kind of clued into it, the fact that it's not a normal thing, it is kind of hilarious in a terrible way. Because it's like a warning, but no one really listens to it. Because again, for the longest time, I'm 27. I'm turning 28 in like a couple of days here. But it's like, I've spent 27 years of my life just looking at fatality signs. I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting. But never really clued into the gravity of the situation that like someone literally died there. And I've been living my whole life that way.
So when you do your driving test to get your license, is that on the test? It's like, what does this sign mean? And it's like a pass or fail.
No, it's not. It's just like
it's a life or death situation.
Yeah. It just exists, and no one can tell you why they exist because no one really clues into the fact that they do exist. Like no one's like, oh shit, we better slow down. Like someone died here. No, I'm still flying 20 over the speed limit because I go to work at 5 a.m. and red lights are simply a suggestion for me. Like I look left and right. I'm like, all right, well, why would I stop here if there's no cars coming at 5 a.m? Like it makes no sense at all.
Yeah. And when it's minus 40, like that's kind of fair too, because if you stop, your tires freeze.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just get stuck there.
Yeah. It's just a terrible idea all around. Like between the large cowboy boot, between the fatality signs, like the Edmonton Oilers are really all Edmonton has to offer at this point. And like Mexican restaurants, because everyone wants to be in Mexico and not in Edmonton.
So it's like their little escape.
Yeah, it's like we just go to Mexico for dinner, and then we just go home and just don't spend any time outside.
It's like if we look at photos of fire, we'll be warm in this cold weather.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, exactly.
You do have the Oilers. You do have the Oilers though, and McDavid is an absolute beast.
Yeah, he's a freak athlete. It's insane. I haven't been to many hockey games in person, but when you do get to see him in person, it's just ridiculous. Like just seeing that dude skate, seeing him handle a puck, it's ridiculous. It's unfair at that point.
Yeah, I'm on this, or it's not even a trend at the moment. It's pretty much an ongoing thing now where I just send Ben NFL and NHL reels over and over again throughout the day. Yeah. Like, look at this guy, look at this hit, look at this fight.
And then I pretty much send NBA and like baseball ones back.
Yeah. Yeah. Like NBA. Yeah. I'm big in the NBA as well. NBA, NFL, and NHL. Like those are the three sports. Baseball, I could never get into. I was just got bored. it seems like a great place to go and hang out with the boys and drink
Yep.
and eat hot dogs. That's what
See,
baseball's for to me.
the funny thing
Yep.
is with me, like I never really got into any sort of sport like to a point where I'm like I'm a diehard fan. But if I say anything in any sport where I'm like the athleticism here is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Like the baseball reels that I'll always send Nick are the ones where like the pitcher will like throw his pitch, batter hits it, and he like catches it like split second later, like
Yeah.
next to his head. And it's like if you were like half a second or even less, like a little bit slower, and your head was a little bit here, your face would probably be a pile of brown mush.
Yeah. Somehow you would knock a chromosome out of your body. That'd be insane.
Yeah. Then you could literally say he's down and out.
Yeah.
I saw. I don't even think I sent this one to you, Ben, because I saw it just before I jumped on here this morning. A hockey reel. Do you know Are you a fan of The Simpsons, Brendan?
Oh yeah, I love The Simpsons.
You know the Simpsons episode where Ralph just like missiles through the front window?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, it started like that, and then you swiped it. It was that photo, and then you swiped the thing, and there was a video of a hockey player, and they were kind of both coming for the puck. And then one guy, I'm not sure if he got tripped or he slipped over, but he started sliding belly first, and the other guy tripped over him and just missiled head first into the glass.
Yeah. That's the beauty of hockey, right? Like it's just a bunch of dudes with, knives on their feet, and they're just skating around. They're all ridiculous. They're all good at what they do, and they just fight each other and hit each other. It's just what sports should be,
Yeah,
Also,
it's
watching the hockey
extremely
fights are so
chaotic.
good.
Yeah. Like like Edmonton Oilers, like the other team in Alberta is like the Calgary Flames. So we have what we call the Battle of Alberta, like all the time. Like whenever the Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames play, it's going to be the rowdiest game ever. Like there's fights nonstop because it's just a battle for like who's the best team in Alberta, and it's always the most entertaining thing to see because everyone is just like the energy is high, like from all of the people watching in the stands, but also like at home. Like I have never seen like my wife and my sister-in-law get so into hockey just watching these dudes fight because they're just here for the violence.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like hockey's gaining a lot of traction at the moment as all of the other sports try and tame down the contact and the violence, and they become a lot more aware of the player safety, etc. And hockey's just really leaning into that more and just gaining so many fans.
Yeah. Like look at NBA, right? Like I got into NBA like probably 5-6 years ago. And like it's tough. Like even from when I first started watching it to when I was like growing up, it's like you can't get away with anything really. Like everything's a foul. Like especially when it comes to certain teams and like certain refs and stuff like that, like or certain officials, like they just don't let anything happen. Like it's not fun. Like they, sports themselves used to be a lot more violent, and I'm not advocating necessarily for violence, but like the entertainment factor there is like something desired.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you look at old NBA clips back in the day, and it was definitely more contact.
Oh yeah,
For sure. So yeah, this episode's going to be a fun one, I think, because not only did I see on your stories this morning that you've been drinking whiskey since what was it, 10:30 a.m. or 11 a.m. or something?
Yeah, 11:30.
11:30 a.m. Ben's got a cough over there. I've got the dreaded C word that I won't say on the internet, otherwise we'll get banned for sure.
Oh yeah.
So this should be a fun time.
I was going to say, on the note of you drinking whiskey, what are you drinking this morning?
I am, for me it's evening, so like it's 5 o'clock here, so it's acceptable. When I was drinking it at 11 o'clock, not so acceptable.
Does that mean that like by association it's 5 p.m. for me and I can justify having whiskey at 9:15 in the morning?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Say no more.
This is literally where the saying "it's 5 o'clock somewhere" comes from. For this situation, exactly. But
amazing.
Yeah,
I'm all for it.
It's a company out of Utah. It's called High West. Fantastic. It's a American single malt.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's single malt scotches. Basically, it's the same kind of idea, just the American version of it.
Yeah, because I can obviously see in the back you've got some Hibiki and some Lagavulin as well.
I do. Yeah.
What is your like go-to day-to-day drink?
Go to day to day. Like, I mean, not that I'm drinking whiskey every day, but I definitely do enjoy myself a glass of whiskey here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Go to is probably something by like Michter's or Old Forester. So
Okay.
I like bourbon, but I like anything. Like someone asked me the other day, it's like, do you prefer bourbon or Scotch? And it's like the answer is just yes. Like I
Yeah,
enjoy
good answer.
it's just an occasion dependent thing for me. Or like if
Mm-hmm.
it's a cold winter day, like something that's going to, burn a little bit more, maybe a little bit more peaty. Like I want something that's going to just knock my face off because it just
Mhm.
warms you. It feels right. It tastes like you're eating a campfire. But like day to day, I like a good bourbon, like a little bit sweeter, something a little bit that goes down a little bit easier. But I'll go for something like a Michter's, if you've ever heard of Michter's, right
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Or like an Old Forester. I like Old Forester as well. Both like great American like bourbon products. Fantastic. Their whole lineups are all great.
Buffalo Trace is not too bad.
Yeah, Buffalo Trace is good too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
it
goes down
depends on
really
where you get
nice.
it. Which is crazy too, because I think you guys in Australia, like it's a lot more expensive, is it not?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty expensive here.
Yeah, like it's expensive. It's expensive here, but I've got a buddy in Australia as well, and he was like talking about a bottle here that's like $80, and it was like $120 in Australia, which is just crazy.
Well, like
100,
even just how much
120 Australian dollars too. 120 convict dollars, which is even more.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
even like how the price of whiskey here has gone up in the last 5 years is outrageous. So it
yeah,
was funny. Like before we started recording, I was like, I'll be back in a second. I ran off. I went and got like the 3 bottles of whiskey that I've kind of. So I'm kind of like in a bit of a halfway house at the moment. Like sort of moved back to Victoria, but going to be moving again soon. So I've got like 3 bottles out that are kind of. I've kind of got one where it's like, yeah, it's my everyday drink. I've got one where it's like, this is a bit more of a, if there's something to celebrate, I'll drink it. And then
yeah,
one if it's like, I need to knock my socks off a little bit.
yeah.
So my everyday is like Dimple 15.
Oh yeah,
I'm
that's
like,
good stuff.
you can pick up a bottle. Oh, if it's on sale now, you can pick it up for around about 75, $80. But it
Yeah,
used to be on sale for like $59, even like 3 years ago.
that's not bad.
The one that I drink that is kind of a bit of a knock my socks off is this Arbolo. So it's a
Yeah,
cask strength. So it's like 60.7%. That is potent as fuck.
yeah.
And then I don't know if you've heard of the brand called Lark. So
No,
they're a distillery out of Tasmania here in Australia. They're a nice little single malt one, beautiful
yeah,
packaging. And again, as much as I wish we were sponsored by Lark, hint, hint, guys, we're not. But that is by far like probably like if someone's gonna be like, "Hey, I'm gonna buy you a bottle of whiskey, what would you want?" Hands down, like my answer would be Lark.
interesting.
Um, so they do like their classic cask. They do like a few like specialty bottles. So in like 6 days' time, they're releasing like a limited edition bottle that they do every couple of years called like Dark Lark.
Okay,
Um, the flavor profile that they've got listed on it was like wild. It's all like they I think they even had like burnt pineapple somewhere in there, but it's like really like high end like single malt whiskey, and it
yeah.
is oh it's stunning.
I find that funny too because it's like when it comes to whiskey, like don't get me wrong, I love whiskey and I'm getting better. I've been drinking whiskey for forever because I was
Mm.
like I was just like, yeah, I'm going to enjoy this one day. So I'm just going to enjoy it straight from the get go. Like when I was
Hmm.
fucking in high school, I was just like, this is just how I'm going to drink it one day. So I'm just going to start drinking it this way. It's the same thing with coffee too. I was like, I'm just going to drink it black one day. So I'm just going to start that way. And if I hate it, I'm just going to drink it until I like it. But like the flavor notes, I think are hilarious because like you can be an absolute nerd about this stuff and like you can pull out yes, I taste leather bound books and rich
Hmm.
mahogany, and like that's all great if you can pull that out. But I mean, like this is a good whiskey. Like, can I pull out little notes? Sure. But I think the people who like can really pull out flavor notes is like either they're pulling something out straight out of their ass, or it's like
Hmm.
they're just overanalyzing it to a certain
Yeah,
extent.
I
Like I
think a
kind of
lot of
boil
the time it's
down.
guessing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I will usually just boil down to going, do I like this? Does it taste good?
yeah, exactly. And it's like,
With
yeah,
all,
sure. Pardon me.
so with the whiskey that you've got up the back there, do you like so back when I was this is going back like 18 months ago, so I had a whiskey collection where I think I had about 34 bottles on display.
Yeah.
And I knew for every single bottle, I knew if I was going to have it neat, if I was going to have it with like a few drops of water, if I was going to have it with one small ice cube, two small ice cubes, one large ice cube. I knew exactly how I was going to drink each and every single one of my whiskeys. Do you drink all of those neat, or do you drink some of them with like a little bit of water, a little bit of ice, like with whiskey rocks? Like,
Yeah, usually it's just neat. Pretty
yeah,
much everything I drink is just neat, and not necessarily out of that I think it's best that way, or I'm tied to any specific way. I think if you enjoy it how you're going to enjoy it. So whether you like a little ice, I'm not going to shame you for it. Like again, there's purists that'll be like, oh yeah, you can only drink it neat, otherwise you're ruining it. It's like, yeah,
yeah,
if you enjoy it with ice or whatever, you can do that. That's perfectly fine. I'm not going to shit on you for it. Although I think it's better to drink it neat, but because you get more of the flavor. But I will, like, every whiskey bottle that I get, I will like try it with just neat, and I will try it with like a couple drops of water to see if it tastes better with or without. And sometimes I'll do that if it does actually make it taste better.
Mm.
I think the quality of the whiskey also makes it easier to drink neat. I mean, when I was younger, you'd obviously just go for the cheapest bottle you could get and drink it as quick as possible so you could get smashed and have a really good night. And sometimes that was tough and led to some horrific consequences. But I remember distinctly the first time I drank whiskey neat, and it was a proper bottle. It was actually Lagavulin 16, I believe.
Yeah.
It's a great bottle.
Yeah, and I was actually in California at the time, working at Domaine Chandon during a summer behind the champagne bar there, and we went and had a few drinks after work with a bunch of the employees there. We were already half cut because when you work at Domaine Chandon during the summer, you do champagne tastings. You pour one for them and one in the paper cup behind the bar for yourself, and you do that all day, and it turns into a pretty good night. And so I remember my mate gave me this, and he was like, "Oh, you'll like this." And I tried it because, like, I'll trust him. And my whole world changed. It was like the best thing I'd ever put in my mouth. And I was like, oh, wow, this actually tastes fantastic. It doesn't just taste like my face is melting off.
Yeah.
I got a fun little addition. Sorry, go on.
I said I had the same experience fairly recently, late last year, actually, at my wife's father's birthday party at a nice steakhouse here in Sydney, and he ordered Michter's for us, and I tried that. I was like, okay, this is probably the best thing I've ever tasted.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
With the Lagavulin 16, I tried that at a whiskey tasting a couple of years ago, and at the time I was like, I don't like peaty whiskey and I don't like oysters, and there was an oyster bar there. And the guy had like a bunch of bottles around the bar. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing with like oysters and whiskey? And he goes, dude, it is one of the nicest combinations you'll ever try. I'm like, I don't like peaty whiskey and I don't like oysters. So I'm like, you've really lost me here. And he goes, no. He's like, every single time we run these events, I have someone that says that they don't like both of them. He's like, I'll make you a deal. If you don't like the combination here, I'll buy you a bottle here for under $100.
Damn.
He goes, that's how confident I am that you'll like this. And I was like, cool. I'm like, I'm either going to get introduced to something that tastes unfucking believable, or I'm going to get a free bottle of whiskey. Like, I can't lose here.
Yeah.
I was like, sure, no worries. He's like, so what you got to do is like, you get the oyster. Like, he's like, you eat the oyster, and then I'm going to pour some of the whiskey into the shell, and you're going to drink the whiskey from the shell. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, like the peatiness from the 16, obviously it's a pretty subtle peaty. It's not a really heavy one, but he goes, that combined with the saltiness of the shell complements each other in a way that's going to knock your socks off. And I was like, all right, cool, I'll give it a go. And I tried it, and I was just like, that's really fucking good. I was so annoyed because I was like, sweet, like I'm going to get myself a free bottle of whiskey. And it was just the most outrageously good combination of flavors. So if you ever get the chance to try, like if you guys ever have oysters at home and you're like, oh, well, we've got some leftover shells, pour some of the Lagavulin in it and give it a whirl and see how you find it.
So like you take down the oyster with Lagavulin, or you take down the oyster and then Lagavulin?
So yeah, you eat the oyster first.
Okay.
Pour some of the whiskey into the shell, and then you drink it out of the shell.
Yeah, see, that's like interesting to me. I would be on your page there. Like I don't mind oyster. I will eat anything. I have
Mm,
no emotional attachment to any sort of animal or whether it tastes fishy or not. I'm a big red meat guy.
me too.
But I'm getting a smoker this weekend too, which is pretty dope.
Oh,
Um,
fuck yeah.
but yeah, smoked meat, cigars, whiskey. It's just the perfect combination.
Can't go wrong.
It doesn't get better than that. But yeah, that's
Mm.
like the last thing I would ever think would be good is like seafood and a whiskey.
Yeah. To be honest, like I tried it the first time. I just like scooped the oyster out and then just poured it into the shell and tried it like that. I was like, if that tastes good, then I'll try it with the oyster.
Yeah.
But it's just the saltiness from the oyster shell paired with the peatiness of the whiskey that just binds together really, really nicely.
Yeah. Like the reason I was drinking whiskey at 11:30 in the morning was because my barber shop, like I have a membership or whatever to this barber shop, and I get a free drink every time I go. And I was like, I'm not going after 5 o'clock. Like I just finished up clients. I work usually 5 in the morning till like 1 o'clock at the latest. Walk over to the barber shop, and it's like I'm not just gonna not have a whiskey if it's free. I'm
Yeah.
not gonna just disrespect the
It'd be
barber,
rude.
the owner of the barber shop. Like I can't do that. So
No.
I always have a whiskey, but he always they do like events and things like that. So I get to try copious amounts of whiskey. And I like my barber, the owner of the shop, is like a big New Zealand man. So like I'm like 190, 195. Like I can put back if I need to. But compared to a 240 pound New Zealand man, there is no chance I could ever keep up with that. But I get to try all sorts of different whiskey from him, and it's just the best. Like being able to try a bunch of different kinds. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, I did wonder. It looked like a barber shop, and
Yeah,
that's honestly one of my favorite things about going to the barber is it's not necessarily just about getting your hair cut.
yeah,
Like that's the byproduct. It's like a happy accident is that you leave with a haircut.
yeah.
It's like you're really just going there for an hour of experience
Oh yeah. It's
and
like
just
yeah, people will talk about self-care. It's like I don't know if drinking whiskey is self-care. Probably the
definitely.
opposite, to be
It
honest
is.
with you. But like I'm here for it. It's my form of self-care. If it's
Yeah.
degenerate hobbies that I like my substances, to be honest with
Well,
you.
we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, where it was like me watching war movies
Yeah.
in bed with the dog, drinking whiskey. I'm like, this is the male equivalent of like self care, and I'm
Yeah.
all for it. The only thing that was missing was like a big fuck off ribeye steak.
Oh yeah, exactly. If you can get that in bed, it's just you wouldn't get me to leave.
Nah.
Man, it's 2024. Literally anything is self care if you want it to be. I mean, I really need to go to therapy, but instead of doing that, I just started a podcast and called it self care.
Yeah, dude. If you come to my lectures, I probably need some therapy. I've toned it down pretty much this semester of L1. But yeah, I just like, yeah, I probably need some therapy. And it's funny because my wife is a therapist. So Shallow always jokes about me being patient zero. So like posthumously somehow she's just writing a manuscript. And one day when I die, she's gonna be like, yeah, these are my findings on this fucking guy.
Yeah.
He was not okay for a long time. He probably should have sought help, but he found whiskey and cigars, so it sort of kept everything at bay.
Mm.
So
And now he has a smoker. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Which is just
I'm
another thing to
seeing
go full autistic on.
yeah, I'm seeing the smoke room in the new built house is just making so much sense now. It's like
Mm.
you thought it was a really nice gesture, and she's just like, "Fuck, I'm going to put extra ventilation in this room so that he never comes out."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's the funny thing too is it was her idea. She's like, "Oh, would you want to do that?" I was like, I kind of had the idea to begin with, but I was like, "No, she's never going to go for that. She's never going to go for that. That's not going to be a thing that she's going to be into." And it was her idea. I was like, "All right, fine, twist my wrist. Let's do it."
It turns
However
out
much-
that the windows are actually like one way mirror, and there's cameras and shit observing you.
yeah,
yeah.
they're
There's
just
padded walls
hidden
behind
cameras.
Yeah.
it. There's padded walls behind the gyprock. Wait a second, this was a ploy the whole time.
It's anything to gather data on this specimen, I guess. Yeah.
Beautiful. So, go ahead, man.
No, I was going to say, obviously, you mentioned like you've sort of toned it down with level 1 this semester. Do you want to kind of run us through how you kind of got started in the industry, the sort of the origin story of you, how you sort of like grew up, what you did growing up, how you got to where you are now, and then how you got involved with Prescript?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Um, I think there's really two ways that most people get into fitness, like to start. Either you're really small or you're bigger and you need to lose weight and like get fit, right? Either way, like I got started in high school, right? That was like the big time that I like really found fitness. Went with a buddy every day after school, every single day, did some bro split, whatever. And then we went to McDonald's and we ordered all of the junior chickens that we could possibly handle because it was free calories and we were poor.
Beautiful.
So like getting into fitness itself, like that's kind of where it started. I was just a small kid. I was tiny. I was like 110 pounds as I went into high school. Left at like 150 or something like that. Still pretty small dude. But like that was like the big entryway into fitness. I was like, I'm small. I need to do something about this because dudes shouldn't be this small. Whether you agree with, standards of male performance or whatever, or more male standards, whatever. So yeah, I got into fitness that way. And then I got injured in grade 12 or like my senior year of high school. And I was like, fuck, it took me out of training for probably 2 years because I sprained my SI joint. Right. So I'm like, fresh out of high school, 17, 18 years old. I was like, this is not okay. I can't even I would bend down to go get something off the ground and my back would just seize up completely. I couldn't get off the ground at 18 years old. I was like, this is not okay. So I started to kind of look into it. And after I started feeling a little bit better and feeling like I could get back into training, I was like, all right, how can I make this never happen again? Right. One was like, I just had a shitty coach or shitty person that was watching us watching us exercise in the gym after high school. But it's like I just wanted to learn what happened and what went wrong, and then I was like, how can I never experience this again? Right? Had a couple other injuries, shoulder, back, a bunch of different things, just from being an idiot and having testosterone at a young age, and just wanting to get big and make girls like you. So started that way, right? And when my real sort of trajectory into fitness, like training itself, was literally just working myself through injury and enjoying the process of that and being like, hey, if I could do this for someone and help them not ever get injured or help them through injury, that would be the best thing. That's the most rewarding career that I could find. So I did what every mother wants their son to do, and I went to university for psychology. So I did that. I didn't like it because it just wasn't practical, right? Like you're learning all these theories and things like that. So I spent 2 years in university, didn't do super well because I didn't care about what I was learning about because I didn't know what to expect, but it wasn't that. It definitely wasn't that. So I remember it was literally the first day of my third year of university. I was like, I can't do this. So I literally walked to the administration office and I just dropped out right then and there. And then I applied for a local college here that has a personal training program. Because I was like, if I'm going to drop out of university, I need to apply for personal training. And on the way to, rehabbing my own injuries and not seeking help because I'm a bullheaded dude and I just stubborn and didn't want to ask for anyone for help because, I need therapy and I still haven't asked anyone for help. But on the way to that, I found the Good Life Fitness, which is a chain gym here in Canada. And it was a gym opening 5 minutes from my place. So I walked in there, they sold me on this, they called it what was it? Basically, they just did assessments on you and they told you why you were out of shape and why you needed a trainer so that you would go in and be like, all right, well, I'll hire one of your trainers for $13,000 a year and we can get started and you can fix my shit. So I obviously, coming into university being poor, not being able to afford $13,000, not even knowing what $13,000 felt like in my account, because I've never had that much money in my entire life. I was like, I can absolutely not do this. So I walked out and she was like, all right, come back in a month and like we'll redo your assessments, redo your measurements, all that, body fat, like muscle mass, whatever the fuck. So I did that, left for a month, like was still kind of training regularly, obviously every single day, and then came back a month later. And she was surprised to see me because I realized after I started at that gym that no one comes back after a month. I just put it in the calendar and I was like, all right, well, yeah, I'm going to show you that I can do this on my own and I don't need to pay $13,000 to get trained by one of your shitty coaches. So I came back to that specific gym. She was surprised to see me. We redid the measurements and assessments and things. She's like, oh, you like gained muscle and like lost fat. I was like, yeah, I'm just eating and lifting weights. Like it's not that hard. And she's like, oh, like if you ever want a job here, just like let me know. And then a couple months went by and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take you up on that. Let's do this. I'm going to be a trainer now. So dropped out of university as I was going to school. And yeah, so that's how I kind of got started in training itself. And then from there, it's just like, I fell in love with the education side of things. Like I came into personal training as a complete newbie to the gym. Like obviously I did the bro splits. I saw some progress for myself because young and testosterone, it works. And anything works when you're a bag of hormones. But really when I got started as a trainer, it was like all of the extra education that you could do. I was like, that's sick. Like, this is cool. This is what I wanted when I started training from the get-go. Right. And to be honest, like they were shitty certifications when I first took them. But just being in a classroom full of other trainers interested in learning, I was like, I've never actually been interested in learning about anything other than lifting weights. So like, getting into that sort of 3-day course, I was like, man, one day I want to do this. Like, I want to be able to be the guy at the front of the room that's teaching these courses, that's like helping other trainers, like, like myself, get from someone who doesn't know anything to someone who can like actually train people proficiently without getting them injured and stuff. So kind of went down that route, worked Good Life for a little while. And then, from there, I was just like collecting certifications, trying to learn as much as I possibly could. And I came across Jordan Shallow on a podcast. And he was like, he had a lot of opinions, as you guys know. It's fantastic. Mm-hmm. Being around that guy, it's amazing. He's the most supportive, like, mentor, person to look up to ever. So he was like spouting off on some bullshit about the hip thrust. And I was like, fuck, I agree. Like I know in the back of my head why this makes sense, or that this makes sense, but I don't know why it makes sense. So found out, started like, going through the RX radio archives and like, listening to those podcasts. And then, from there, it took L1, like the first ever intake that they came out with. And then I was like, this like changes everything. Like it's everything that I kind of knew. It just shifts the frame of mind that I take when I appraise exercise and make programs for clients. It's like, this is fantastic. This is everything that I wanted when I first started training. So, took that course, and then I was like, dude, finish the L1. I emailed him. I was like, I want to learn from you. I want to internship with you, whatever it takes. Like, I need to learn from you. No response whatsoever. None, not at all, which is like fair because I didn't realize what it is. And I'm just a relative unknown. But like, getting to know him through the course, I sort of at the same time got started with breathing work through like the Oxygen Advantage stuff. And I was like, hey, dude, like, what if I made a breathing course and like offered it to the people in the course for like a discounted rate? And basically from there, from that DM, which I still have in like my favorited photos, because it's like a pivotal moment in my career. He's like, dude, why don't you just work for us? You build the course, we'll pay you to build it. We'll just like let you run it. I was like, dude, this is amazing. So from there on, it was basically just like my foot in the door was breathing work, which is hilarious because I smoke cigars and drink whiskey for a living. So not for a living, but for enjoyment. But that's kind of, that was a living. I wasn't too like long-winded for you.
No, that was perfect. I was tossing up this morning whether or not I was going to start the podcast with a breathing joke.
Yeah.
And just be like, okay, so just out of the blue, just ask you to talk about breathing for the next hour. It turned out it went down the whiskey train, but I'm glad you brought up breathing. So
yeah.
when you you mentioned Good Life. When you went to work at Good Life as a PT,
Yeah.
and this probably has absolutely zero relevance to anyone that's listening within Australia, but anyone that's potentially in Canada or the US that listens, they'll know what we're talking about. Did they teach you the like the Good Life method, I guess, of how to do a consult with a new client as a PT, make them feel like they're the shittest human on the planet, and that the only way they can not be shit is to hire you as a PT?
Essentially, right? Like they say it without saying it, you know? Like it's kind of an unspoken thing. And like their big thing was like overcoming objections, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that was like a big salesy thing. And like, hey, I'm not gonna shit on Good Luck because they obviously got me in the door. And I think any coach, like if you're just getting into the business, I think working for a big box gym is the best way to go, right? To get your hands on
100%.
people, it's fantastic. But like the overcoming objections thing, the making people feel like shit, I just never subscribed to it. And my manager at the time, I don't think she liked it very much. She didn't really say it out loud, but like if someone said they didn't have the money or they weren't interested, I viewed it as a problem with myself. And I was like, I just didn't provide enough value. So I'm not going to fight you for it. I'm not going to fight you for the sale because I didn't do something. It was a shortcoming on my side that made you see that, you know, this process or this personal training wasn't going to be worth the $13,000 or whatever that I was asking for you. Right. And that's
Yeah.
perfectly fair. I was in the situation in the same boat. Right. I have a pretty tremendous respect for money. And like, you know, growing up without any money, I was like, I couldn't ask someone for that much money and force them to do it. There was one person that I did force to do it, and it was one of the worst clients that I've ever had. So
Yeah.
yeah, without saying it, yeah, they definitely like they're like, yeah, basically you just got to tell them why they're shit, and then they'll sign up with you.
Yeah. I feel like the fitness industry, it's easy for us that are within it to get so caught up in the things that I guess we don't like about it. But when you zoom out a little bit and you look at what was happening 10 years ago in places like that, and how we were like making people feel, it's come a long way. I
Yeah,
feel like that happens a lot less now than what it did then. I mentioned earlier that I spent a bunch of years over in the States, and while I was over there, I was working for 24-hour fitness. During that time, we had executives and you know whatever from Good Life come down from Canada because they were killing it in the sales department, the membership department, and the PT attachment department, and the numbers there were huge. And they brought them down. 24 Hour Fitness brought them down to kind of teach us how you guys were attaching fitness or personal training to your memberships at such a high percentage. And essentially, it was just like anyone that signs up, you have to just force them to do this.
yeah,
And and as much as it worked, it also just felt horrible most
yeah.
of the time. And I'm so happy that as an industry, I feel like we've moved past that for the most part.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I didn't subscribe to that. I was just like, all right, I'm okay with having less clients if it means that I'm getting people who can, one, actually afford it, and two, are actually motivated to do the work. So it's like it just also self selects in a way of like the better clients, because like the people who are actually interested in training are the people who are going to put money down and actually invest in it. So it's like I was able to have clients that were actually into it, and I didn't have to fight with people to like come and get their workouts in, right? Because they realized that, all right, I'm going to spend this money, I'm going to get everything that I can out of it. Where it's like the people that you forced into it is just like with shitty tactics, just were the worst quality clients.
I remember a couple of years ago, I did a little bit of upskilling um, with the owner of a gym here in Melbourne, who like they sort of like built a lot of their brand around. Oh, we do this mentorship. We teach you, you know, how to be like a world class level trainer. Rah rah. We teach you the sales. Like we run a 7-figure a year like private PT gym. We're going to teach you how to do the same. And I remember when they ran through how they do their sales, they were bragging about, oh, we are, you know, we had these people that came in for their consults. They told us that they couldn't afford it because like they were quite a, you know, a premium price, and they're like, you know, yeah, they couldn't afford it, so we convinced them to go and get a credit card, come back and put their credit card down so they could afford their training. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, that to me is just like so fucking unethical.
Oh
Like
yeah.
when you get people who like just are like, well, I genuinely cannot afford this service. It's like, cool. Either offer them a lower level service or refer them elsewhere. Like, you don't
Literally.
have to be a shit human and be like, I'm going to manipulate you so I can steal your money.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And I think that like that stuck with me so much through the Good Life days that's like, hey, I'm not going to do this. So even to this day, like, because I work in person, I work online. I teach for Prescript. I have a bunch of different hats that I wear. But in my personal business, like I don't make people do contracts. Like I
Mm.
do, I have options for 2, 3, and 4 times a week for my in person services. I do bi-weekly payments, just like they did kind of at Good Life, except there's no monthly attachment to it. Like they don't sell for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, whatever. They just, they just go until they don't want to anymore. It's a terrible business decision potentially, right? If you actually want to have like consistent income, but like I've had the same clients for fucking since I've started working on my own, like 6 years or so. This is my 6th year on my own. And it's like, I haven't tied anyone in. And of course, there's going to be turnover. But like having not locked anybody in, they stick around for a long, long time.
Mm.
It's like just it keeps the onus on you to like continue to do a good job and provide results for the people. But it also like I don't tie them into anything because it just doesn't feel right to me. And again, no shame to anyone who doesn't. I said flat out that it's probably not the best business decision from like the classic sense. But for me, it just makes perfect sense, and I feel good about it.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad business decision at all. I mean, while I was still at 24 Hour Fitness, they actually abolished all contracts
Yeah,
and only started selling the month to month or the no lock in contracts. And what they found was it was a whole thing where they got bought out by a company that owned Home Depot, and it was predominantly like a service based company. So they moved away from the sales tactics into much more of a service focus, abolished the contracts. And what they had found that there was actually a lot less people canceling because they didn't feel like they were locked into anything. They were actually just there because they wanted to be.
yeah.
Um, so
The other
yeah, I
benefit
don't.
too is like I don't have to ask for money. Like it's just like, all right, every 2 weeks it's gonna come out. And like I don't have to worry about that conversation. Be like, all right, do you want to buy 30 more sessions from me? No, we just go. It's like,
We
is it
just
more
go.
money up front? Absolutely not. But in the long run, that the lifetime value of that client, if we can distill it down to that, other than just the value that I can provide for myself and like being a better coach and like providing results for people, the lifetime value of that client just is just so much higher.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah. So you brought up a bit of I guess, an interesting topic that I'd like to dive into a little bit, if we have time. Is you mentioned you do face to face and online coaching. Obviously, with the landscape of 2025 being what it is, and the internet being so prevalent, it feels like everyone and their dog is an online coach these days. Where do you see, or do you see, and if you do, where do you see the value of in-person coaching, and what do you see the benefits of having a really good, a solid understanding of in-person coaching, and how does that translate to the online work that you do?
Yeah, like I think in-person coaching is like, there's people that start in every aspect of fitness, right? Like you have the people who have never trained a single person in person, and that's perfectly okay if like you're doing your part and like going and educating yourself and doing the work that it takes. But for me, I think like the in-person stuff has been pivotal. Number one, like man, I grew up without a dad, right? I grew up like a pretty introverted person. Like half the time I was on a farm or in a trailer park or in the city, so I split my time quite a bit because parents were divorced, etc. So like I was a pretty introverted kid, didn't have a ton of friends in school, and it's like I had no concept of like how to work with people, how to interact with people other than the people who I was comfortable with. So it's like in-person coaching for me made me a completely different person. Like the person who started training and the person who got out of university in psychology would not be on a podcast today with you guys, because they're the fear, or like teaching for prescript or whatever, because like the fear of public speaking, the fear of people judging you, etc. It just wouldn't be a thing for me. So like being able to work in person, putting yourself in that uncomfortable like situation where you literally are forced to talk with someone and hang out with them for an hour, right? It's been the most beneficial thing for me in my career, because it just builds that relationship with the client. On top of that, like, you're able to get hands on with people, and if you can get hands on with people and like have experience, trying to coach people out of their dysfunctions or like help them move better. In my opinion, it's that hands-on experience that will translate to the online stuff as well. Right? Like, if you have no concept of like how you might be able to make a change in person with a client, how are you ever going to do it when there's the barrier of online work, when you just have to send a video, right? Like, I like in person a lot because I can make that change really quick. Where the feedback process online is a little bit more delayed. But because I've done the in-person thing, it translates really well to the online side, because I've already been there. I've already been I've already seen the situations that happen in person. So like, I know the cues and things that I can tell people, when it comes to training them online. It just makes it so much easier. So on top of that, it's like you also just get a higher volume of people. It's easier to get people in person if you have a gym like Good Life that's just feeding you people. So you get greater experience with a greater number of issues that come across your roster in front of you. So it's like being able to look at this wide variety of people in front of you, and like, all right, well, I've dealt with this severe case, because they would just throw me cases of like very complex things because no one else would want to take them on. It's like, once you get that experience, you're like, all right, anything beyond that is easy. Like anything, like I work with coaches primarily at this point, because I teach coaches, and I enjoy like that side of the coaching process. And with like the prescript stuff, it just makes a lot of sense for me. And I want to be the person that I wish I had when I first started training. But like, being able to work online versus in person, there's obviously going to be parallels there, but I think it's just going to benefit you more if you're able to work in person and actually produce results there.
Beautiful. So, look, I'm going to do this early, Ben, and
yeah, I figured you would.
I know,
as soon as he said that, I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, I'm going to do this early. So, what you just said there ties really well into kind of this little segment that we do at the end of each episode, which is we have our previous guest ask our next guest a question.
Okay.
Yeah. So, our previous guest asked what I thought was a fantastic question, and it kind of dives a little bit deeper into just how you ended that little soliloquy that you went on there about in-person coaching. So the question that was asked of you by our previous guest is, what quality did you need in a coach growing up, and do you provide that now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say, like, growing up, I needed someone who, like I talked about before with my like whatever coming up story of like being injured in high school. It's like someone that knows what they're doing and who can solve problems quickly, which is kind of like the prescript ethos. If you really think about it, like that's what it comes down to. It's come down to solving problems quickly. But being able to understand the person that's in front of you, right? Look at the person that's in front of you, see what's going on in their movement, see the deficiencies and how they move. I think that's something that every good coach needs, regardless of whether you're online or in person. So, I would like to think that I provide that these days, because like I was just so motivated by people getting taken advantage of, or people not caring, right? People not caring enough about their job and their career to like actually put in the work, communicate with your clients, and actually make a difference in their lives, as cheesy as that might sound. But it's like, that's all I do, that because I know I've been there. I've been in this situation where like I have been injured because I haven't had people who actually gave a shit. So like giving a shit is the number one thing that I like to think that I do with my clients, and I would hope that most of them would agree with you. But yeah, that's like the biggest quality I think is like having someone who actually gave a shit, who took the time out of the day to spend, maybe working on my squat form with them, or like giving me the accessories and stuff that I didn't even know I needed at the time in order to actually capture some of those, ancillary benefits that you can get from some of the accessory movements, right? Things like that. I think are like the biggest quality that I needed as a kid. And I hope that I can provide that for my clients now.
Very nice. In terms of like some of the sort of like ancillary benefits that you mentioned from some of the accessories, what would you say the main ones were that you felt like you needed that you didn't get?
For me, and like to the understanding that I have now, anything with like manipulation of like center of mass, and not to go fucking nerdy with it and full autistic.
Please do.
Dude,
Please
you're in the
do.
right place for that.
Perfect.
Yeah, you triggered my autism so bad the other day without even knowing it. You posted a photo on your story of the fence or the gate that you had just built, and there was just this fuck off big gap under it.
Yeah.
And before I had read the little writing that you're like, there's going to be a thing here, don't worry about the gap. Like, I just had autism spidey senses just like
Have we lost Nick
exploding
again?
onto the screen of like,
There we go.
why is there such a big gap? And then I read it and it was all good. But yeah, you triggered me pretty hard for a couple of seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Like the building of the fence thing was like, man, I was like, I can't post this because like my eye is just drawn to that gap. And it's like with like, okay, going in on like the yard work shit. It's like they're like the way that water needs to drain. It's like there's swales. So like water needs to drain away from your house. So naturally, either the option is that I have to build a fence that's fucking sideways, which I couldn't do it. I could not handle that mentally, driving up to my house every single day, seeing this fucking gate that's on an angle. Couldn't do it. Couldn't handle it. So I was like, all right, if I'm posting this, which is like, I'm pretty proud of the fence. They're the gates that I built. But
Beautiful gates.
like, yeah, fantastic. Like homeowner orgasm right there. But like when it comes to that, I was like, I need to preface this because otherwise someone's going to comment on it and I'm going to like need to explain it 10 times. So I'm just going to get this out of the way right off the bat. But yeah, some of the accessory shit that I think like the manipulating center of mass stuff is what I needed to like get into a good squat position. And I was a fucking dumb kid who just worked out for the sole purpose of just getting big, right? No focus on like form or technique or anything like that. So it's like my back squat, although it wasn't terrible, I just had no idea what I was doing, right? So looking at the concept of center of mass and being able to, use the exercises and like loading parameters themselves to like shift your center of mass back. So like you have the tools in your tool belt in order to actually, when there's a barbell on your back that's literally just kicking your center of mass forward, it's like, how are you going to cope with that? Right. And when it got really heavy, I had no ability to manage that. Right. It's just a barbell on the back with, I think I got up to like 350 pounds in high school. That was the most I ever did. And on that rep, I hurt myself. So it's like when there's 350 pounds on your back, when you're just 130 pounds, it's like, how is your body responding to that, to that demand with the exterior load on your body, right? Being able to understand like the external environment dictating the internal demand, right? Looking at center of mass and being able to look at like, hey, if I maybe just did some extra accessory work, like anterior loading, right? Front foot elevated shit, split squats itself, like unilateral movements just didn't exist when I was in high school. Like I just didn't do anything unilateral. It was always bilateral shit because that's what I thought grew muscle, right? Split squat. The concept of a split squat didn't occur to me until I started personal training. I was like, fuck, this is great. So it's like being able to work unilateral and actually resist force through 3 different planes, right? Stability through those planes as well. Like that's the shit that I needed when I was younger, right? That's the shit that I would have got me moving better and kept me out of pain, right? Not that you can necessarily predict injury, but like it's the unilateral shit with those loading parameters that really makes a difference for people, right? Like I worked with people who have never set foot in the gym in their life. And those are some of the most rewarding clients that I've ever worked with, because you're able to just start from a completely blank slate, right? It's people who have never been indoctrinated by any sort of, outside influence or outside opinions on like what bodybuilding.com has to say, right? You're able to, actually intervene at the time that they're getting into the gym. It's like, hey, this is important, right? Being able to work on one leg is actually a very important thing for you and your hips. And if you want to get more out of your squats, this is kind of what you need to do, right? Mm-hmm. So I think for myself, like that's where the importance really would have lied. It was like even just working unilateral, but understanding the center of mass stuff to get me into a better position for my squat probably would have eliminated that injury completely altogether.
Yeah. And so that injury, in hindsight, having the injured back, and that kind of in some ways formed the trajectory of the rest of your life and your career moving into fitness. And I feel like a lot of the paths you've taken since then have been to try and help other people not be in that same position that you're in. So I guess looking back, if you did have that influence that you provide to your clients, they come straight into the gym and they don't have to have that struggle and that moment of like, oh, fuck, this is really bad, and I probably could have done the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years better to help form what has now become, I guess, your career.
We'll be back on in any second.
Am I back?
Yep.
Yeah, you're back now.
Cool. I guess it's been doing that all episode. I just kind of sit here quietly and hope that it comes back. Yeah. What I guess what I'm trying to get to is, and I'll try and do it quickly so it doesn't happen again, is how do you feel like if you did have that influence straight out of the gate, how do you feel like that may have changed the trajectory of how things have panned out?
I think in terms of a trajectory, it's like thinking about the time that I had to take off in order to get out of that pain, right? Like I said, I took 2 years off because I still just felt like shit for that whole time. And again, I didn't ask for help. Maybe I should have gone to a physiotherapist. I don't fucking know. Probably would have been better and would have got me back on my feet. But it just sent me into such a depression where I just didn't feel like I lost the one thing that I actually felt joy from, like being a fucking autist, who found an outlet in lifting weights and something that actually made me feel good. Just losing that for 2 years was just like brutal. Like I hated the idea that I just had to wait for 2 years. And again, I should have done something better. And that was just me being a dumb, stubborn kid. But like, if I had that influence right off the bat, number one, I don't know if I would have been a trainer at that point. Like I had contemplated it in high school, like training could be a thing, but I was always told that you couldn't make money from it. But I don't know if necessarily, having that injury be avoided would have necessarily got me to where I am. I'm a big proponent for like, I don't have any regrets throughout my life, right? I think that making the decisions that I've made in my life, however bad or good they were, they got me to the exact point where I am now and where I needed to be. So, I hate to say I'm almost grateful for it, because like, if it wasn't for that injury, the trajectory of my life could have been completely different. I could have just sucked it up and maybe did psychology, and, someone who really shouldn't be in the minds of other people could have been in the minds of other people, and just calling people dumb for dealing with stupid shit. So sorry, not to downplay anyone's experience or anything like that, but I think for myself, it's like, going through that definitely set me up for the trajectory where I am now, which is like personal training, which is where I belong, where I love to be.
Yeah.
Just imagining a world where Brandon Schultze is a psychologist that's a fun task.
It's scary. I can't talk about fatality signs like I could on this podcast.
No,
exactly.
Another little segment that we do on sort of towards the tail end of our episodes is there's a question that we like to ask in terms of obviously trying to gain a bit of a better understanding as to sort of like who you are and what kind of drives you and where you're hopefully sort of on the trajectory to end up. If you could have dinner with any person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Dead or alive, hey?
Mm.
You know what? I honestly, like, as cheesy as it might be to say, like, honestly, I just like going to dinner with friends and stuff. Like, I would rather go to dinner and travel to Toronto or whatever and have dinner with Shallow. Um, or like I'll go for dinner with my wife. Like, I enjoy that. Like, if I had to pick someone that wasn't like directly, fuck, wasn't directly in my like circle of influence. It's tough. It's tough because I like when I was getting into fitness, I never really had anyone that I looked up to. Like, and that was the thing. Like, I learned from so many different people, and I think that's great. Like, being able to learn from Charles Poliquin and his lackeys nowadays, Andre Benoit and Christian Thibodeau, like some of those guys. Like, those are great people that I've like learned from, but there hasn't really been anyone that I've like looked up to or whatnot for training or in the coaching industry. So like, I think honestly, Shallow has been the biggest influence in my life and like my training, career trajectory, that like I've been to dinner with him many times, and I think I just do that because he's just continues to be someone that supports me. And I've seen him more times than I can count, and I just want to do more of that.
To be honest, like I quite like your answer in terms of it either being like your wife or your friends or Shallow.
Yeah.
It's always quite interesting. Like we sometimes get people that, we've had a couple of guys that have said, oh, like, if I had the chance to have, dinner with their late grandfather, they're like, I would choose that. And I always feel like the more simple answers in terms of it being like the people that we are very close with, I feel like that is probably, and this might be a little bit the soft way to sort of finish, but I always feel like it's a really like heartwarming answer. It's like, the people that we obviously are close with and we're around from a day-to-day perspective, like they're still the people that we would choose to sit down and enjoy a nice meal with, regardless of who we've got the option of. I think that's a nice sentiment.
Yeah. It's like,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. Sorry.
I appreciate you saying my wife, because that would be your wife, because not my wife, hopefully not my wife, your wife. You can have dinner with your wife, I'll have dinner with my wife. I appreciate that, because my wife would be my answer. And I always kind of feel weird when we ask this question, and in my head, I'm like, oh, mine would be my wife. And then I feel like that's a bit of a nerdy answer, but yeah, I'd just hang out with my wife. Like, otherwise I wouldn't have married her.
Yeah.
Like, so like, my partner's not technically my wife yet, but I still refer to her as my wife. So I'm like, yeah, that'd probably be my answer as well.
Yeah.
My three favorite answers have been your answer being your wife or Shallow, and Killian's answer being his friend from New York.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Brandon Greco. Do you know Brandon? I think he was in the first ever level 1.
Yeah, I think we were in the same cohort, actually.
Yeah, he said his late grandfather.
Yeah.
They're my 3 faves.
And
I'm with you, Ben.
And that's the thing. I think, like, whatever lesson I could learn from someone else by going to dinner with them or whatever, I think can be learned by simply just existing and going through life and like coming across challenges that you need to face. Like, I don't know. I get stuck with that thought in my head. It's like always trying to look for places, where I could like solve a problem for myself. And it's like, I don't know, man. Like, I think everyone has the tools that they need in order to solve the problem. They just might not know that they have those tools yet. So it's like, whoever I could sit in front of, I'm not necessarily going to want to learn from them. I would want to have a great conversation, but it's like, I still just kind of selfishly want to go through it myself and learn from my own experience, not necessarily just from someone else's. Like, I want to just try and fail. And if that doesn't work, then I'm just going to get back up and just try something different. Right. So like, being able to just go out for dinner with my wife and like, we like, she's a psychologist. I'm a trainer. Like, there's some days like today, like I've worked since 5 o'clock and I'm on a podcast with you till 6 o'clock, 6:30, however long we talk, because I've got no time limit. But like, I just like after this, I'm just going to go upstairs. I'm going to go cook dinner with my wife and we're just going to sit down and enjoy each other's company. So it's like whether it's a friend that, I greatly respect or enjoy, or I could sit down for a cigar and a whiskey with, or my wife where, we can just sit down in the house that we built together and the life that we're building because we've been together for 12 years and we could just enjoy each other's company. I think that's what I would rather do. That's what I would rather think about because it's a realistic answer, number one. And number two, it's just what I would want to do anyways.
Yeah, I feel like the podcasting is the 2025 version of who would you like to have dinner with?
Any second now.
And
Here I am. I was just saying, am I back yet?
yeah, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I think podcasting is the 2025 version of who would you like to have dinner with, and this Ben and I experienced this when we decided to start a podcast at the start of the year, and then a couple of months in, we said let's try and see, like, it would be cool if we could not only do the podcast with just us once a week, but maybe we could do once a week where we bring a guest in and start to talk to some other people in the industry that we look up to and talk about them a little bit and their experiences and draw some comparisons and maybe learn something off each other and just try and foster some really cool conversations. And what we've found is that when you just ask people, they say yes.
Oh no, the cliffhanger.
The fun part is this is probably giving him the shits more than it is us.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's giving me the shits so bad.
So what's the fun part? What's the fun part?
The fun part is what we've figured out is when you just ask people, they say yes.
Yeah.
Have we had anyone actually say no?
No.
Oh, man, the cliffhanger.
I don't think we've had anyone say no, but yeah, it's been a really great opportunity that we can kind of, reach out to people in the industry that we really respect and be like, hey, look, we'd just love to talk to you for like, between 50 minutes to an hour and a half and just sort of like get a better understanding of, their background, their history, where they want to go, how they got to where they are. And it's been like, I know for me in particular, like, it's been an opportunity to speak to some people where, I mean, like for you and I, like, obviously, you took over one Shallow's lectures for level 1. And then I think off the tail end of the level 1 intensive they ran here in Melbourne is where I kind of like came across a bunch of pre-script coaches that I sort of like, hadn't met in person yet. But like just the opportunity to, to connect with guys, like obviously all the pre-script crew has been amazing to connect with. I mean, like I went through their level 1 in 2020. And then obviously like doing their level 2 at the moment has been really cool as well to connect with another layer of coaches. But I think as far as like the podcast goes for us, like being able to sit down with someone like yourself, have a good chat. I mean, I was incredibly tempted to pour myself a whiskey, but I'm like, it's just tick past 10 o'clock. Like it might be a little bit early for that. But like at least getting to sit down, have conversations with people that we otherwise wouldn't have the option to sit down with. I mean, obviously with you being in Canada, us being in Australia, like it's not like it's a, hey, like, man, like just drive an hour down the road and catch up at a cafe and talk shit. Like I think the opportunity for us to sit down and pick the brains of the people that we look up to and respect has been a great opportunity for us. So I just want to take a moment just to say thank you for your time. And obviously like I appreciate you and everything that you are doing. It's been a great hour and 8 minutes or so.
Yeah.
So far.
No, well, no, I appreciate you just even asking. Like it's been a little bit since I've, been on a podcast and not that I'm not taking any opportunities. It's just that I've been a little bit lackluster with the social media stuff. And I'm kind of like an unknown relatively, at least in like the broad spectrum, maybe not the right word for that, but
it's probably the right terminology for this conversation.
The right terminology. But as in terms of like influential people out there, I'm kind of a relative unknown person, unless you've attended prescript lectures and stuff like that. But like like I said in the beginning, like I'm a pretty, I used to be a pretty, alone kind of introverted guy. And like now I love stuff like this. And I love like, we've kind of toned it down a little bit with the in-person prescript stuff.
Mm.
Fucking Nick's gone, but we toned it down a little bit with the in-person stuff, but being able to go and travel and like, meet some of the people that I've been able to either teach or like, come into contact with through prescript has been like the best thing ever. Like I love being able to travel to different places and be like, hey, we talk online and it's like, this is who you are in person. It's like that sort of, connection that you can build in the online space is just mind blowing to me. Like,
Mm.
I still like, even though I'm a younger guy, like I still grew up with floppy disks. Like I'm still on that's like that side of the world where it's like, man, like the fact that I can just talk to someone on social media and like now we're talking face to face ish through the internet and talking about what we love to do the most, whether it's whiskey or whether it's training human beings. I think that's cool. I think that's the coolest thing ever.
Well, so like on that note, if you ever do get out to Australia, like you'll have to let Nick and I know, like regardless of sort of where you end up, even if like I have to catch a flight up, like we'll definitely have to organize a night where it's like, yeah, we're gonna eat a big fuck off steak, we're gonna drink some really good whiskey, and we're gonna smoke some cigars.
Oh yeah, I'll bring cigars. I've got a full cabinet down there. Full
Fuck
cabinet.
yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So, to kind of pass on the question to the question tradition, I guess, what would be a question that you would like to ask the next guest?
I think the next question I would have to ask someone is like, compared to like where you started coaching to where you are now, like what has been the changes in your personality or in your life that has like that has gotten you to the point where you are now? Like how are you different from where you started to where you are now? I think because like that's been such a big part of like my life and like how I'm a completely different person. Obviously with the same dark sense of humor and daddy issues that I have, but like being able to look at like where you started versus where you are now. It's like how has this career, this like life changed who you are, like to your DNA in a way. Because it's like you hear people like live and die by like, oh, I'm just introverted. Like I just don't like to talk to people or hang out with people. It's like I'm a homebody. It's like I mean I've literally done everything that I can to like not fix it. Like, and I still have those introverted qualities, but it's like what gotten you to this point now? It's like how has this career changed you the way that it has changed me?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Where can everyone find you? Where can do you want people to message you, or do you just want to be left alone? And if you do want people to message you, where can they do that?
Oh no, dude, bug me all the time. Like I love it. And I say this at the end of every single lecture, and it's hilarious because I think people are joking about it, or people think that I'm joking about it, but I'm absolutely serious. Like anytime I get to talk about training or help you with something or answer a question, it's like that is what I love to do. So I pretty much exist on one platform, and it's just Instagram. So it's Brandon.Schultze, Schultze, and Brandon, Brandon. So I think that's the only way you should spell Brandon because that's the only way that makes sense in my brain.
How else is it spelled?
Fuck, dude. I went to school with lots of different Brandons. Like there was a Brandon with an EN at the end. It's just weird. It's like, I don't know. Again, like the autistic thing with the gate. It's like, fuck, I just can't. It just doesn't make sense. And that's just on your birth certificate. So
Forever.
yeah, forever. Yeah. So yeah, Brandon.Schultz on Instagram. Absolutely. Message me anytime. Like ask questions, whatever the case is. Whether, I have no interest in coaching you if you have no interest in, training with me. So it's like I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just want to help people. That's really what it comes down to.
And I don't know if Ben's actually been onto your profile yet, but I just pulled it up. And you have a pinned story highlight reel of nature.
Uh-oh.
We're talking pinned stories.
Yeah, something about nature,
Brandon,
I think.
when you when you start to get to know me a little bit more, you're going to realize how fucking much this is pissing me off and how well I'm doing to hold it together. Because I tell you what, I'm going to have to go on the lay on the lounge for 45 minutes just to let my rage subside. That's how my heart rate is so high right now. And I'm just holding it together so well. I'm so proud of myself. And I just wish that you knew.
So every time Nick and I have a podcast with just him and myself, anytime like we debrief on the weekend and like for example, the other weekend, my partner and I went out for a walk around a lake near my place, and we went like mushroom hunting where we just like walked around trying to find mushrooms because they're all starting to come up at the moment. And every time we do shit like that, Nick's just like, dude, you're just a big fucking hippie.
Yeah.
So having a look at that nature pins thing of your stories, I imagine he's probably like, he's like, there's 2 fucking hippies around me and I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I was going to use your pinned nature story to make fun of Ben. That's what I was going to do.
Yeah. You notice how it's also on the very end where I don't post very much. And don't get me wrong, I love nature. I think nature is great. It's sick. I love being able to, number one, it gets me out to a place where people don't live. Like, people don't exist in nature. So, like, I don't have to deal with them. I just get to go out where trees and birds are. And, like, I just get to enjoy that. Again, not that I'm, like, a completely introverted person, but yeah, I mean, the nature thing it's just funny because it's like, it goes between cigars and meat. And then it just like, that's what the most frequent things that I post are to my story. So yeah, we can make fun of Ben for nature things and hippie things. It's fine.
Yeah, he sent me a reel of like lightning striking a volcano erupting.
Yeah.
Yesterday, and I was like, dude, see, this is just why I stay inside.
Yeah. See, that's the thing.
Too much.
That's the thing with nature is like in Edmonton, Alberta, you either just stay inside and drink whiskey and hang out with friends, or go to Mexican restaurants because again, that's where you'd rather be than Edmonton. Or you go to the mountains, or you go on a hike because you're like, wow, like life actually is kind of pretty. You know, you don't have fatality signs in nature.
Because when people get eaten by bears, there's no sign they died.
Exactly. That's the way it should be.
Yeah,
you should be left on your toes at all times.
It sounds very much like Seattle. I mean, if you know anything about Seattle, it just rains pretty much all year. So it's like, anyone says, do you want to go outside? Do you want to go in nature? It's like, no, let's stay inside and put the Seahawks game on.
I feel so bad.
He'll be like raging.
We should just have a second podcast, just like after the podcast, that just like just goes into how angry he is.
Well, you guys are going to hear about it. Trust me. Cool. I think let's just finish it up on that note. That's really good. I can't hang anymore. I cannot contain my rage. I need to go and let it out.
Yeah.
So Brandon, thanks so much for joining us, mate. I really enjoyed this.
No,
yeah, me too. Thank you.
Having me out.
Anytime.